So this week, I got a lot of inspiration from James's sermon last Sunday, talking about love is a verb, right? Love is an action that we do, something that we do in our lives. And it got me thinking about how obsessed we are with, do I have a green light? How obsessed we are with love in our lives. And if you think about it, it's in the movies, it's in the books we read, in the stories that people tell, it's in the music we hear. There's always people talking about, singing about love, right? And so it got me thinking about some of my, I like country music. Country music kind of, it's got this happy feeling to it. It's not afraid to make fun of itself, to make jokes. But also it has sometimes a nice religious aspect and family aspect and patriotic aspect. So, I like some country music. Not all, but some, and especially the words to country music songs. So I thought, well, I should look up and see if I can find some good country music songs that would help me with this sermon about love, about real love. So, here's a few of the song titles that I found out. Went on the internet and looked it up. So, she made toothpicks out of the timber of my heart. That is very, classic. My tears have washed I love you off the blackboard of my heart. Well, and then there's I'm so miserable here without you, it's like having you here. And then the classic, Billy broke my heart at Walgreens, and I cried all the way to Sears. Right? Yeah, very profound, statements here. Well, then we've got, I keep forgetting that I forgot about you. Or, I liked you better before I knew you so well. There's a good song, right? Catchy title. Then you have Love Will Beat Your Brains Out. Very profound and deep. The last word in lonesome is me. Right? And then finally the true classic is You done tore my heart and stomped that sucker flat. Or roughly translated, you tore out my heart and smashed it. Right? So, anyway, country music good for lifting my spirits sometimes. I have to admit, I didn't listen to these songs. It was good enough to look them up on the internet and get my spirit lifted and laugh a little bit. Probably, if you want to look them up, you just need to type in country music love songs, and you'll find a lot of interesting titles. And who knows what the music sounds like. But I do want to talk about love. As unificationists, we know that love is at the core of everything that we talk about and we think about. It's the core of God's design for our life and at the core of our life purpose. I encourage you, when you have a chance in our Saturday seminars, there's always great discussions we have exploring the significance of God's purpose and God's design for creation. And it always is coming back to God's love and the desire to experience loving relationships with us. Here's a quote from the Divine Principle. It says, once Adam and Eve had perfected themselves as individuals, centering on God, they were to live as one, forming the four-position foundation in their family. Now, the four-position foundation, that's unification speak for a diagram of relationships. It represents four positions. God, in the first position, husband, wife, and then children. So you have four different positions. It's a dynamic relationship. So sometimes you'll hear us use that term, four-position foundation. And that's what we're talking about, the four different elements of this relationship. Living in whoops, I went too fast here. Living in oneness with God's heart, they would have led a life of goodness, sharing the fullness of love and beauty. People who are in total resonance with God's heart will lead the natural world in the free-flowing sharing of love and beauty, and the entire universe will realize goodness. Now, then from Father Moon, this is from the Cheonsang-gyeong. What kind of beings did God create us to be? We were created to be the object partners of God's love. Object partners, basically just think partners. We were designed to be partners with God. He created to have his, we were created to be the partners of God's love, to have his absolute and unique value. He created man and woman to enter with him into a partnership of love, thereby endowing them with greater value than even the whole universe. It continues, human beings are born from love and raised from love, and they live in love until they die in love. When we teach the divine principle, the first place we start is the principle of creation, talking about God's ideal. And at the core of that is the understanding that the reason that God created this universe, our life, is for the purpose of experiencing joy. Joy through loving relationships. Relationships with God first. The first very beginning point is our relationship with God, that loving relationship. Then relationships with each other in our family, with husband and wife, with parents and children, with brothers and sisters, all these dynamic, and a loving relationship with things in creation. So love is at the core of everything. And that's the beginning point of understanding our purpose in life, our fulfillment in life, and the nature of the design of the universe. Now, the second part of the teachings, we have to admit that we're not experiencing that in our lives, that we struggle with the experience in love. So what we do in the principle is understand and look at what is the root cause. What did we lose at the fall? And that's true love. That wonderful, loving relationship that so beautifully designed, when we talk about the ideal, is what we're missing in our life. So what we lost in the fall was not just love, but we lost trust in our experience with God, and also we lost those beautiful relationships. So we'll talk a lot about the loss of trust, particularly in a relationship with God, but also the loss of proper kinds of relationships with each other. Then the largest part of our teachings emphasizes on, well, how do we heal that? We don't want to just sit, okay, everything is all bad. How do we heal that? And so the principles of restoration, at the core of that, has to do with our ability to love, with true love. We're fixing what was broken in the Garden of Eden. So that restoration of that trust, connection with God, and proper relationships with each other. This is kind of the dynamic of all of our lives. We're all wrestling this, whether we're spiritual and religious people or not. We all wrestle with establishing trust and establishing good relationships. Trust and relationships. Jesus made this really clear when he talked about, when he spoke about what's the most important things in our life. In fact, it's called the two great commandments. So Jesus said, this is from Matthew, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. In effect, loving God is where we have to establish trust, and loving our neighbor is where we have to establish those relationships. You can see these two great commandments. Loving God, that's where we begin. The first place is our connection with God. Restoring trust. We know we can trust God, but can God trust us? That's the real challenge. And loving our neighbor, restoring proper relationships with each other. Here's Paul as he describes the nature of love and that challenge that we're wrestling with. How do we become people of true love? Paul writes, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. This is truly a profound statement. If we go through, and even in my own life, if I reflect each one of these things, patience, kindness, envy, boasting, all these are things we should check ourselves with. Are we people that are practicing and living that kind of life of true love? As unification, as we kind of boil all that down, right? You've probably seen this definition that we talk about all the time, the definition of a true love. In fact, let's all read it together, right? True love is thoughts, words, and actions for the benefit of others, even at the expense of myself. Easy to say, very challenging to do, right? Very challenging. I was, here's an example. I'm working on the sermon, maybe late last night. I was kind of trying to pull it out, and I'm really focused, really trying to get my work done. And then my wife, Eleanor, comes in and she says, "Oh, are you hungry? Would you like something for dinner?" And so, how do I respond? I jump up and I, "Leave me alone! Can't you see I'm trying to write a sermon about true love?" Well, actually, it didn't happen that way last night. But I have to confess that it has happened. But, someone comes in and very generously, "How you doing?" "Leave me alone! I'm trying to concentrate." So stressful. But it's a useful illustration too, because we do that. Sometimes we're just so focused on what we're doing, and maybe we're stressed or whatever, and someone comes and just trying to be nice to us, and we blow up. I'm going to come back to that illustration a little bit later. But let's hear some more words from Father Moon. This is also from Chun Sung Young in the book about true love. In true love, you give love and then forget that you've given it. What is the line between good and evil? Evil is where something is given with the intention of receiving all the benefit for oneself. And goodness is where even though you give, you forget that you have done so. So we've heard this many times, right? It's still challenging to do. Give and then forget that you've given. Well, last week, on Wednesday night when Reverend Thompson was here, he was sharing about a number of things, and he brought up an interesting book that he'd read. It was called Real Love by this guy, Greg Baer. And so I looked it up online, and actually it was interesting. This week at work, we evaluate social service programs is my job. And this week I'm going out to Child Protective Services and looking up records of people who have been where Child Protective Services is being called in because there's some kind of problem or breakdown in the family. It's actually kind of heavy stuff to be going through. It's a really sad story. I see. And Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that's what I was doing. I was just going through all these records. I have 1,000 names to look up and looking up all these people. So I downloaded from this guy's website his audio, some of his talks. So I'm plugging in my ears and I'm listening to talk about real love while I'm looking up tragic things. But he had a lot of useful things to say. Actually, it was kind of inspiring. I thought, we talk a lot about true love, but honestly, we're wrestling with how do we do it? How do we do it all the time? And he brings a little bit different perspective, and I think it's sometimes useful for us to see how can we approach this problem of being loving people from another angle. So I thought, well, this is a useful thing for me to share, and so I want to share it with you. So his definition of real love, we call it true love, he uses the word real love, is caring about the happiness of another person without any thought for what we might get for ourselves. Sounds like give and forget, right? It's pretty useful. Also, he says the other side of that is that when we feel real love, true, genuine love, is when another person cares about our happiness unconditionally, regardless of what we do. Even if we make foolish mistakes, like jump up and scream when you're trying to, you're trying to help someone who's, they're working hard on their sermon, and they jump up and yell at you, well, you love them in spite of that rude behavior, right? Or, when we fail to live up to people's expectations, when we're trying, but we don't, and we fail, mess up, and the people still love us, we feel genuine love at that point. He talks also about imitation love, the other side of that. False love, imitation love. Imitation love, because a lot of times in our life we don't experience real love, true, genuine love, that kind of unconditional love, which even developmental psychologists talk sometimes about the developmental stage. The very first stage in social emotional development is the establishment of trust. That babies, the first thing they experience in their relationship with the universe, first their mom and dad, is this a good place? Can I trust that the world is fundamentally good? And that comes from their experience, first with mom, and then with dad, and then with the family. Is the universe care for me, or is it out to get me? And that's the very first thing that we learn. And it's through the experience of unconditional love that we get nurtured that way. It's a need that we all have, is to know and to experience unconditional love. And we also know in God's design that God's perfect love would be expressed through parents to the children. So children, we would already experience that genuine, true, real love. Well, imitation love or false love is something that we experience a lot of, because we need to fill up that emptiness. We need to feel love. And when we don't, we feel a lack of that love, then we look for other things to try to fill up that need for love. Problem with imitation love is it doesn't last. It's like junk food. Actually, in the last week in our starting point class that we have after service, and I encourage you, anyone, it's open to come and join us. We're going to be talking about prayer today. But last week we were talking about you are what you eat. And, so physically, you eat junk food, you're going to get junky health, right? Well, spiritually also, what we eat, what we take in, if we're taking in good stuff, then it nourishes us. We call those life elements. God's truth, God's love, those kinds of things. But also there's this other component. Sometimes I forget about it when I think you are what you eat. It's also, we know that we are nourished by what we do, by our actions. When we take actions of love, our spirit grows and receives vitality elements. So, are we putting junk food into our spirit, or are we putting good food into our spirit? And imitation love, fundamentally, is junk food. There's all kinds of it, but basically, you can describe it mostly as it tastes good in the moment, but it doesn't really fill you up. So you want some more soon. It's kind of addictive. You got to get more because it never satisfies. It never fills us up. So it's interesting. His definition, Greg Baer, the way he defines imitation or false love is it's any love that we have to pay for. That you have to do something for. If you have to make effort to get that love, it's conditional. Like, the amazing miracle that my wife still loves me even when I do weird things like yell at her or something when I'm stressed out. If it was she was only going to love me as long as I was nice to her, then I'd be in real trouble, right? How about babies? How about kids? If your baby is giving you a hard time, well, sorry, no love for you today. You pooped in your pants. No love for you today. Now, once you learn how to change your own diaper, then you can get some love. So, unconditional love is that love that comes no matter what, and we need that. But any kind of love where we have to do something to get that, there's something lacking. Now, I'm not saying don't do anything, because part of us expressing real love is where we get filled. That vitality comes when we do things of true love. But we need to recognize that any kind of love that someone has to earn, that someone has to work for, if you get a good grade, I'll love you. If you get a bad grade, I'm not going to love you so much. Now, we tell people, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then, why'd you do that? When they do something that upsets us. So how do we cultivate this kind of genuine love? It's a challenge. The first thing is to recognize when we're doing imitation love. And there's 4 areas, 4 substitutes for love that Greg Baer talks about. One is praise. Right? If you get someone compliments you and just kind of out of the blue, then it's like, whoa. But if you get used to, you do something good, people praise you. Well, that's nice to get. And I'm not saying, please, don't compliment people and don't praise people. But we sometimes think that that's a substitute for the real love that we need. The real love that we need is that unconditional. Not just because you did something good, I love you. No, because you did something good. Maybe I'm proud of you, want to compliment you, that sort of thing. Power. You substitute real love with power. If I can't get genuine love from someone, maybe if I can just get them to do what I want. Right? If you do what I want, I'm going to feel love. I got them, if you go out and you buy me a new car, I'm going to love you. When you get people to do what you want, well, that's manipulation, right? That's not love. And we can do that. I mean, we do that. I do that. I don't know, maybe you guys don't. But when we try to get people to do what we want and think that that's love, we're fooling ourselves. And it's not satisfying. So we need to look, how can I find that satisfying, that fulfilling kind of love? Pleasure. It feels good in the moment, but then, later on, it's like, well, where's the meaning, where's the depth, the unconditional. And safety. A lot of times we aim towards just being comfortable. It's like, as long as I'm safe and I'm comfortable, then it's okay. We substitute that for genuine love, which is the caring that another person has for us. So he points out that it's, I like the way he states this. He says the real problem that we have is that everyone is lacking this experience of real love. Now, when I teach divine principles about the fall of man and the original sin, I like to a lot of times just equate fundamentally what all of us are experiencing is a core lack in the experience of God's love, of that perfect unconditional love, which initially we were supposed to receive through our parents and it expressed in the family. So this very clearly lines up for me. Fundamentally, we all are experiencing this lack of love, this feeling of some deficiency, of the experience of true unconditional love. This is a love that God has for us. Sometimes it's hard for us to understand that, to experience that, to know that, but that's the reality. And how do we practice that and bring that into our lives? Now, he brings some pretty good applications. He talks about anger is the topic that he particularly is focused on. He says, everybody is angry. Everybody's walking around in a state of anger. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at things. Yeah. I mean, the reason is because we are in constant pain because of the lack of this unconditional real love. And he gives a really good analogy. If, say, maybe in the summertime, some of you have gone out and gone swimming or something and gotten a sunburn, right? A sunburn. Well, when I was young, growing up, maybe in middle school, we lived in Orlando, Florida, and we'd lived before that. We'd been in kind of more cold environment, so we went there and we went to the beach one summer. It was so amazing, swimming in the beach, and this we're talking a long time ago, Stone Age, before they even talked about make sure you put on sunscreen. We didn't have that word sunscreen. You put on oil so you got a better tan, not to prevent you from getting a burn. So I got incredibly burned. I was burned on top of my burns. It was so bad. We were staying in a hotel at the beach, and then afterwards they had to put ice packs on my back, and the ice packs would just melt really quickly. And I couldn't lie on my back because it was so painful to lie on my back. So imagine walking around with this kind of sunburn, and someone bumps into me. Now, if I didn't have a sunburn, someone bumps into me and says, "Oh, hey, you okay?" "Yeah, okay, you're fine, let's go." Someone bumps into me when I have that sunburn. They bump me like this, and then maybe I turn around, and then I hit the wall behind me. I'm in incredible pain. I'm so, I see red. Leave me alone, don't touch me. What are you doing? I'm just furious at them. Is it because they touched me, they bumped me? Not really, because if I didn't have that sunburn, it wouldn't have been a problem. It would just be, "Oh, okay, you okay? Okay, yeah, fine, let's go on." But because we are constantly in pain because of this lack of the experience of that true, unconditional God's love, divine love, we're living in this state of pain where anything can set us off, anything can hurt. And we typically respond with anger or all kinds of other expressions. So fundamentally in our life, we've got a deep problem. Human beings, because of the fall, are living in a constant state of pain, which is a state of separation from that unconditional love that you're safe, you can trust the universe, even things are difficult, things are going to work out, that you're loved. One of the most important things for us as parents, challenges as parents, is to make sure that our children know that they are loved. Now, that doesn't mean we don't discipline and we don't, chastise them, we don't correct them, but it means they have to know that no matter what, that they are loved. And, we all grew up without that perfect love, so as we become adults and more mature, we need to recognize that even though our parents couldn't give us that perfect love, God is the parent who is desperate to give us that love. That God is the one who wants us to know that and experience that love. And wants us to be people who can convey that to others, to make that difference in the world around me. So that anger, that pain that we're all in, it's basically an expression of I feel empty, I feel alone, I feel unloved. I have this desperate desire to be accepted and loved, and I don't feel it. People don't care about me. The universe doesn't care about me. This is the pain at so many people's hearts. So one of the most important things that Father Moon did in trying to help us understand our lives and fulfillment in our lives was to teach us the nature of love, and especially the nature of God's love. Because that's the source. That's the source for healing in our lives. That's source for that great sunburn cream that can comfort us and also help with the healing. Our challenge is how do we do that? How do we find real love in our life? How do we find true love in our life? We know that we can't make it happen. We can't control another person and make them love us. This is even especially in our workshops and when we're talking about divine principle over and over. It says, why did God just let the evil happen? Because God doesn't control us. We have genuine responsibility. Because God wants genuine love from us. God wants us to love Him, not because God's nice to us, not because God's the great sugar daddy in the sky who gives us all these good, sweet things. And nice. No, God wants a genuine love relationship with us. So if we want that kind of love in our life, we can't control another person to make them give it to us. Love me! Come on, love me! Even though we try, look how great I got. Tell me you love me. This is our desperate action. We do this a lot. Look, I'm working real hard. Please tell me you love me. We see this all the time with our young people. They're trying to get approval. They're trying to get love that they shouldn't have to make effort for. They need guidance and direction so that they know and they can grow and they can be successful. But there should never be any need for them to work or earn our love. And people in the lives around us, they should never need to earn our love. Our challenge is to become people who can love no matter what. Now that doesn't mean that we let things go, that we allow people to do bad. It's the story of we love the sinner, but we hate the sin. We love the person no matter what, and we try to help them end their suffering, and because when they're doing bad, when they're off course, they're creating more suffering for them. If we genuinely love and care for them, then we invest in them. We try to help them. So, real love is the key ingredient for us to have genuine happiness in our lives. So, how do I find real love? Anyone got an idea? What's the secret formula? Actually, Father Moon's told this a lot of times. How do we get love? Love ourselves. We give love. When we give it, then it comes. Actually, all the time. If we give love, God can fill in and fill us in. Can help us know ourselves genuine love. Recognize that the source of love, that I am loved, comes from God. So the first step in relationships, if we want to find real love in our relationships, in our partnership, in our family, in our work relationship, is we need to be people who give it. Who give it. And it's actually amazing. When you're working on a relationship, ask the question, how can I be more loving in this relationship? Because I can't control the other person. I can, maybe if I cook this special dinner, then I'll be loved more. My kids will love me more. My husband, my wife, they'll love me more. If I do something. But that, maybe they will. Maybe they'll get, they'll say nice things, they'll praise us or whatever. But that won't fill us up. The only way is that we have to start modeling and giving that love. It creates a basis for God to also fill us with love. When we start loving, when you inject the presence of genuine, unconditional love into a relationship, magic happens. It's amazing. Because all of us are starved for genuine love. When we receive that kind of love from someone else, we cannot help but be changed. So, how do we make real love happen? We start by giving it. This is from Jesus when he's talking about the nature of love. He says, "There's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect." If we were afraid, if we have to do stuff to get love, because I'm always afraid I might lose that love, then it's not the genuine love that we need. But this is the most important line. We love because He, meaning God, loved us first. From the very beginning of creation, God is the source of love. From our very inception, God loved us. We are recipients of God's love. Challenge is to open our hearts, to receive that, to know that, to meditate on that, to know that God, even when the process of creation gave everything to create this amazing universe that we live in, this beautiful environment. Anything, when we see something that brings joy, we feel, thank you, Heavenly Parent, for loving me, for that love, for that expression of genuine love. So, from Greg Baer's book, it says, so, how to find real love. Only for $19.95. Call this number right away, and you can get the key to real love. Actually, the website is reallove.com. Actually, it does have a lot of useful insights and very practical things that we can do and that we can use. So, number one, the first step that he recommends is that we need to recognize that everyone suffers this lack of love. That everyone is sunburned. And we need to be, recognize that we're all suffering from that deficiency of that unconditional love. From a unification perspective, we call this seeing things from God's point of view. from God's perspective, the God that loves everyone, the worst person, the best person, everyone, the whole range of people. God loves each one of us and grieves at the suffering that each person is going through. Grieves because that person is not receiving that perfect love that they should be. We should all know and experience that genuine, real love in our life. So from God's perspective, God sees the pain that each one of us is in. As God's children, can we cultivate our own hearts, our minds, and perspectives to recognize the suffering that everybody, we all have pain. We all have challenges and suffering. Can we appreciate that and love people who are in pain, who are in suffering? The second point he makes is to seek to understand the other person's perspective. First, we want to see from God's perspective, so we can truly have a perspective, a loving perspective on them. But also, we want to seek to understand the other person's perspective. A few weeks ago, when we had some marriage education seminars, I remember Bento Leo came. A great class in empathetic listening, where you practice in a conversation. It's a little bit artificial initially, but profound in the experience, where a couple or two people one person would speak and the other person would just listen and repeat back what that person said. With the not just memorize and repeat it back, but share the meaning of what that person said. It's actually a profound experience when you have someone repeat back to you what you just said to them. It's like, oh, they actually heard me. How many times you're talking and you're talking and talking and you see the person's eyes kind of glaze over, and you really know they're not there. They're not listening. It's like, yeah. And as husbands, sometimes we get good at, yeah, We get good at those little prompts that kind of give a clue that we might be listening. Anyway. This practice of active listening, empathetic listening, it's a very useful and downright profound exercise to do, where you actually share. And the truth is my experience, Ellen and I, we did it back and forth, and a lot of times what I say back to her is not what she meant at all. Like, whoa! Even if I'd been listening, I wouldn't have gotten what she was trying to communicate. Even when I'm trying to pay attention, I interpreted what she said in a certain way. So by giving feedback and saying, well, this is what I hear you saying, says, oh, no, that's not really the point I'm trying to make. Why didn't you understand? That's not the point I was trying to make. But then she has a chance to clarify with me, right? So then I can genuinely start to understand. I can then see what's being shared. I encourage all of you, even just relationship with friends or whatever, practice this exercise of active listening, empathetic listening, where you share, you take turns. One person shares, and the other person doesn't respond until they've already made sure that they got it down clearly what the first person was trying to communicate. So, empathetic listening, profoundly, our relationship with each other. Then the third thing is to accept people unconditionally. Now, love people. This doesn't mean you let them do anything they want. Oh, I have to love them and accept them unconditionally, so as they're tearing up the room and the house and whatever, I have to love them. And no, it doesn't mean that. Because by not guiding them and educating them, you're actually not loving them. Without giving them guidance so they can be successful, then you're not really loving them. But sometimes when we critique our kids, sometimes we're doing it because we're so embarrassed by what they're doing. Not because we love them and want them to be fulfilled and happy people, but because we're embarrassed by what they're doing. It may be the right words, but the heart is different. So this is why we're always working to check our hearts. I want to correct and guide the people around me, my children, share with people that you're teaching or you're working with or helping, with the heart of, I accept you and I love you and I want to support you in being even more successful and more fulfilled yourself. This is the motivation we're looking for. It starts from accepting and loving, and then providing guidance. Not, oh, I can't accept that you're this way. You have to change for me. No. But genuinely loving them. And then the fourth point is be responsible. Be owners. As in the Unificationist language. In talking, it's called using I statements. Owning up to what you're saying. Instead of saying, you make me mad, right? Is that being responsible? No, that's saying that they're responsible. It's their fault that I feel this way. I statements is a typical linguistic technique where you say, when you did that, I felt this way. Versus you made me that way. I feel that way. When we start owning up and taking responsibility also for our shortcomings. Someone comes at me and with anger, you're always, I try to be helpful and you're always so rude to me. So, number one, I need to see that person from God's perspective, God's son or daughter. I need to try to see them from their perspective. Here, they're trying to help me, and because I'm all stressed out, I'm not being very responsive. I need to accept and love them. Even though they're kind of yelling at me right now, I love them. This is something I care about. And then the way I'm going to respond is, okay, I confess. I recognize what I'm doing is off the, and I recognize that I have a problem with this. And I promise you, I determine to work on it. And that can't just be empty words. But it means, in another week, please just give me feedback. How am I doing? Am I being more sensitive? Am I listening a little bit better? Because it takes time. We're breaking old habits and establishing new habits. But when we take responsibility, we take ownership, remembering that we can't change someone else. But we can have an impact. We can influence and have an impact by who we are and what we do. And most powerfully, the way we love, the way we care about people. So, here's from the divine principle. According to the principle of creation, God's love is the subject of all loves, flowing within the four-position foundation. In four-position, remember those 4 points? God, husband, wife, children, and the family. Which is established through their dynamic love for each other. Without God's love, there is no way to establish the true four-position foundation, really that proper dynamic relationship. Without God's love, there is no way for us to fulfill the purpose for which we were created. Love is truly the source and wellspring of our life and happiness. And Father Moon says, from Chun Sung Gyun, lost in the rapture of love, God created man to live forever. So in our life, we've lived receiving the love of our parents and our children. And after having experienced love as a couple, we have loved our children as their parents. Therefore, the love of God and everything we have sown in the inner world of love is to be brought to fruition over the course of our lives. When we pass on to the next world, we reap the fruits of our lives and take them with us. The only thing that lasts in life is love. Not the imitation love. Not the things that we sometimes use to substitute and fulfill that genuine need that we have. But that true unconditional love. Both that we receive, and we want to receive that, and we need to receive that through our relationships. And also that we are people who give that kind of unconditional, genuine love that nourishes any person's soul and experience in life. Let's be those sons and daughters that God can trust, that God can work through, that God can express God's profound parental love to the people in our lives, in the people in the world around us. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, beloved Heavenly Parent. We're so grateful for your working in our lives and the chance we have to be your sons and daughters representing your love. We're so sorry that many times we've fallen short, and we know that even many times we chase after the artificial, the short-term, the imitation love, recognizing that we have this deep, desperate need for your genuine love in our lives. We pray we can be people that you can work through, people through whom your love can be expressed, people through whom this world can be healed. Thank you for your trust and your confidence in us. And as your sons and daughters, we determine ourselves to look again in those circumstances where we're angry, where we're upset, where we don't feel loving, and find your perspective. Grab at that other person's point of view. Take ownership and responsibility ourselves and express that your love in that true, genuine, real way. Thank you. And as your sons and daughters, we offer this prayer and our pledge to you. Amen and adieu. Okay, thank you. Please turn to your neighbor and share your thoughts about real love.